Namaskar. My name is Arjun and I'm from Russia. I'm a volunteer. I've been here almost more than a year, and for the last few months I've been responsible for the garden.
My name is Ruben and I'm from Spain, and I'm a biologist and a permaculture teacher, and I've been here since November, and so we got the season from last year, the end of the season, and all the preparation of spring and summer.
And today is the 30th of August, and it means that it's the end of summer, so we decided to make a video just to evaluate and to show you what we have done, what mistakes we have done, to avoid them next year.
Yeah, and great tips. Permaculture by David Holmgren is to produce no waste, and therefore we have a compost here in our house, and so this compost is ready to be decomposed by the microorganisms and micro insects. We're gonna leave it for about 6 months. So now it's covered with straw, and just to make a reminder, it's because the last few months some volunteers forgot to use straw. So what we want in a compost is a very nice lasagna. We don't want just a nitrogen, which is vegetables and fruits, but we also need a fiber, which is carbon. But it can be a straw, or it can be cutting grass from the garden, for example, or it could also be seaweed. So that's something to remember for next generations. And the second one, we have the compost that we're using at the moment as a pile. This will not be ready until next year, so we are not using it in the garden.
Yes. One of the next principles of permaculture is to use local resources that you can find around, and just for you to remember if you are in this garden next year, we cut the grass, and this grass we can use for mulching that avoid weeds growing, that you don't need to weed afterwards. It also gives nutrition and to keep moisture. And also you can go to the beach and collect some seaweed, and here we keep horseshit, but now we don't have it. So horseshit and also compost from municipality. So it's different diversity of nutritions, that is good. And also, as Ruben said, we have our own compost. So good combination of these things give a lot of nutritions. In our garden we have 3 greenhouses, and one of them it's the big greenhouse. Here we have tomatoes, cucumbers, actually just a few plants of cucumbers, they're doing fine, bell peppers, some flowers, and different herbs. And we can go in actually. And one of the mistakes that we have done this year, that we planted bell peppers on the west side. So make sure next year you plant bell peppers in the greenhouse, because they like hot, warm climate, and on the west side of the greenhouse to have enough light and sun. And also make sure that you plant big varieties of tomatoes also on the west side. Yeah. And also this year we used some kind of compost. We put melons, you can see, and watermelons, melons, just to give nutritions and to create some good environment for worms who work in the soil. Yeah, and you can see it works very well. We have a lot of tomatoes this year. Just for August we harvested 140 kilos of tomatoes. So yeah, that's it. Greenhouse, big one. We have Savoy cabbage bed. So next year make sure that you move this bed a little bit further to have this in the same level with the greenhouses. You can see the greenhouses, because we want to make a path from there to this greenhouse. Um, yeah, and this year you can see we used mulching, and we didn't weed actually this bed at all, and we can see it's very well, going very well. So use mulching.
One, the cabbage are a big attraction for caterpillars. Those are the caterpillar butterfly, and they are actually enjoying quite a lot in here. But also means that the plant itself is producing some kind of phytochemicals that are um, making the plant more resistant and attracting insects that are predator of the caterpillars. So some of the leaves we are not eating them because they have big holes. Of course, they are not suitable for sale, but we haven't have enough time and resources to fight against the caterpillars this year. So one simple solution could be to have a net over the cabbages, meaning that the butterflies wouldn't just step on the leaves and put line the eggs. That would be an easy way to prevent this situation. Yes. So now we have a couple of small greenhouses here, what we call caterpillar tunnels. This one in particular, we're growing zucchinis, we're growing cucumbers, two varieties, we're growing big tomatoes, and we also have one new product. It's called physalis. It's a small sweet tomato from the cherry size, and it's orange. And as a tropical plant that is doing so great in here that we cannot harvest so much. And then this year we've been struggling with the plastic because it's a temporary solution. So the plastic is broken. We put in some temporary solution. For next year we need to find out what kind of plastic we're gonna use. And there's one issue here. It's quite expensive. And so because the greenhouse has been open many nights, especially in June and July, so the tomatoes are not ripe enough yet in comparison with the other one, the big greenhouse. And so you can close it, we can have a look to what we have inside. We also have some flowers. Calendula, it's a medicinal plant that we love to put in salads, but we also can make cosmetics out of them. So this is the physalis I was mentioning. It's very sweet, and they love it in bakeries as well. Really recommend it.
About the big greenhouse, this year we planted a lot of tomatoes, and we have 7 rows now, and it's quite difficult to go between and harvest what we have. So next year need to plant 6 rows, around 6, or 6 is okay, but not more. It's too difficult. And one more thing, in the greenhouse a lot of slugs. That's why we also use slug traps. We use jars with beer that is diluted with water, and it's dig down into the soil. So slugs just go there and die.
So this is the second caterpillar we have. We've been struggling with a lot of work through the summer, but struggling especially with this greenhouse because it's been broken and the plastic is also quite broken. So we found a piece of plastic somewhere behind the house. It seems like very thick layer of plastic that we're gonna use. And today is 30th of August, and last week we were weeding these beds, and we planted 5 rows of Swiss chard, radish, lettuce, and a few more things. We also have a zucchini there that is growing by itself from seeds from last year. This is good. That's as a present from nature. We decided to adopt it, and that's it. This is our food. Part of the food that we're gonna have in around November. We're hoping for good weather and still a few weeks more of heat, so that they grow in a good way. We also have kale inside. That is a autumn and winter crop, biannual plant.
So one of the principles of permaculture also is 80% of implementance, whatever, and 20% of maintenance. So at the end of the spring, this spring, and also at the beginning of summer, we were overwhelmed because basically we created a new garden. We changed all the design. Now we have Hugo beds, design A that we will go through later, and design B over there. We covered all the garden with cardboard, put horse shit, compost, soil all together, wood chips you can see. So it's a lot of work. There were not enough volunteers. That's why we will wait with planting, and and also many plants that we planted died because we just were overwhelmed. So next year will be much easier because now we have new design and already paths that we just made also. So yeah, now we will go through each bed and design.
Yeah, so two principles of permaculture from David Holmgren are: the first one, observe and interact, and the second one, obtain a yield. Meaning that observe and interact. We've been observing the garden and the land for the last 4 seasons, meaning that we have an overview of what is happening, where is the wind coming from, how much is raining, and where is the sun shining in the morning, and where is the sun leaving the place in the evening. And very important, obtain a yield, meaning that you cannot run in an empty stomach. This is good to have of food growing here because we can trust ourselves on what we use as chemicals, whether we use something or not, and we can cultivate so many things that we don't find in supermarkets. And so that's great. We're tasting always new species, within flowers, within leaves, within roots, within fruits, and that's fantastic all over spring, summer, and autumn time. So we've been through a transition from last year to this one. The last 2 years there was by intensive production against the contour lines, and we lost a lot of soil. That's why we're creating this path. And this path is basically a layer of cardboard and then a layer of wooden chips, because that prevents the weeds to come, at least for the first few seasons. And then that is also building the soil because it attracts microorganisms and insects that are decomposing the carbon into transforming it into soil. So that's nutrients for the soil, and we're building layers of soil slowly, and that also keeps the moisture and avoid the soil erosion. And we also have stones to mark the limits of the beds on the paths, as well as we have in some of them we have logs. Those logs that we've been collecting after the pruning of the fruit trees that we have in the orchard. So here we have a couple of hugel beds that are already three years old. And this year we decided to cultivate poppy flowers, as well as a few things that didn't come. But we have mint, for example, that is perennial. We have strawberries that are perennials and doing a great cover. So we're picking a lot of strawberries during June. I think we need more strawberries for next year. so keep it in mind. And they reproduce asexually, meaning that it's very easy to divide them and to replant them or transplant them. We have a pumpkin here. If you come closer, you can see there is one pumpkin from the Atlantic giant variety. Even though it's not so big yet, but it can become a bit bigger. We also use some climbing structures because sometimes we find beds with beans or peas that are climbing or other species. So we believe that we need to work and produce food in different layers as a recreate in a forest garden. So ground cover, and then we have annual plants and perennial plants, but also climbing plants and bushes, berry bushes. And here we have calendula, and here we have amaranth that is producing a lot of seeds that we remember ourselves to collect a lot of seeds from the garden this year, so we don't have to spend money along next year. That's a great resource. We walk down here, so we find lupulo or the hops. That is a great climbing plant. Doesn't require much maintenance and is perennial. And we created some kind of door structure as an entrance from the lateral side to the design A. So let's have a break. Late on fixing the irrigation system because we changed completely the design from last summer to this summer, and that requires a lot of input and energy at the beginning, but next year is gonna be much easier, I believe. So here we have, in each hugel bed we have 3 pipelines, and a few weeks ago we started planting kale and Brussels cabbage that will survive through the autumn and winter. So that's gonna be one of our source of nutrients for the volunteers and the whole community. If we walk further, we have here design A that is a bit square, has 4 corner beds, and so it has beds that are in contour line where we grow in a lot of stuff. So here we have horseradish, we have a sweet chard, we have a present from nature. There's a walnut tree, we have rhubarb, we also have mallow flowers. This is a perennial plant, it's producing a lot of seeds and the flowers are edible. No problem with that. We also have borage. They will be eating flowers, blue flowers, in a couple of days perhaps. And this is one of the entrances to design A. And look what we have here. It's a huge pumpkin. If you get frustrated with any problem in the house, you can come here and do boxing. So we're gonna have a few more of these pumpkins pretty soon. And we build these structures that are for them to climb. So we're utilizing more the space because cucumbers and pumpkins are taking all over the space because they can grow horizontally, covering the ground, but they take up so much space and light.
But I think this structure will be improved a little bit because the pumpkins are quite heavy, so the structure is getting down, it's breaking down. So, yeah.
So here in this bed we have parsley in combination with peppers and corn. So we have 3 different species growing here. The parsley is doing fantastic. The peppers are growing quite slow this year, and I think peppers will do better in a greenhouse because they require more heat. But parsley and celery are growing pretty well, so I strongly recommend you to grow much more quantity next year.
And make sure you plant peppers in the greenhouse because here they don't grow. So one of the things that we noticed, that here we have a bed with celery and corn, and look at that, it's amazing. No weeds, and they are growing so well. So use it very well. And here we have flowers, different, it's like herbs. So what is that?
So these ones we have calendula again, and then we have nasturtium. That is this this leaf with the shape of a plate. The stem, the leaves, the flowers, and the seeds are edible. Here we find one of the flowers because they are hiding in between. In this bed the plants are thriving. But I can say that we also had radishes before, and we were eating a lot of radishes. Some other beds here in the garden, we already planted a few lines with salads and kale and cabbages for the autumn and winter. In this one, for example, we have some flowers, but also we have tagetes, is another flower that is attracting a lot of insects. It's also edible, but I don't find it personally. I don't find it tasty. Then we also have in the other beds we have celery, and we have pumpkins, and we also have clover, and we have parsley and sweet chard, and we also leave in some cauliflower for seeds.
So, and a few more things. You can see that we have sunflowers around, and what we did, we just bought some seeds from a supermarket that we usually buy and sprouted, and now we have sunflowers. And one of the things that hares sometimes come and eat our stalks, like here, stalks of sunflowers. One of the things that you can prevent from this, it's to pee around, that you mark the territory, and they will avoid this territory.
But pee is not only good to avoid the hares or other kind of mammals, but also because it's good for the plant. It's nutrition for the soil. It's full of nitrogen. So let us use it instead of throwing it through the toilet.
One more bed that grows very well, it's with kale. You can see we mulched it also, and there are no weeds, and it's growing very well. But kale can be also with something. What do you think, Ruben?
So in the case of kale, we experienced last year that we had aphids on the lower side of the leaves, and we need to be careful with that. It's just because they are sucking the liquid out of the plant, the salvia, and that meaning that we need to prevent from them to come or other treating the plants. There are some organic chemicals that we can use. One natural that we can prepare at home is a garlic solution. The other one that might work, it might be coffee solution, especially to avoid the slugs. But other ways, you can buy some chemicals that are organic certified, which might contain copper, or it might contain sulfur powder, and those might work for sure. Other ways, you might lose all the food from here, from the kale. But kale is fantastic. It has a lot of minerals and vitamins. It's super healthy. I think it's considered superfood, and you can use it. You can make salads. You can cook it, or you can bake it in the oven. However, in the oven, might lose a lot of nutrients, as you know, because it's high temperature.
And in winter in Denmark, not so cold, so actually we eat kale also in winter. It's still not growing, but not dying. That's why we go in winter and harvest. So plant kale.
Yeah, so in these beds, for example, in the CNA, we planted in a way that is using synergy. I mean, some plants support each other in different ways if they grow close to each other, so they are beneficial, creating beneficial relationships. But that's not practical because the irrigation system we have here is not so well designed in a way that actually it doesn't work properly. It has to be straight lines. Otherwise, we risk of that some plants are dying because they don't get enough water. And in this bed, for example, we had beans and we have pumpkins and we have red clover, which is actually very good for teas. Has a lot of minerals and is even better than the white clover. And then we have one plant from the Apiaceae family, or Umbellifera. This kind of plant attracts a lot of insects and is also very tasty in salads. Yeah. So, but if we continue our walk through the garden, we can see that we have these beautiful structures that if they survive through the winter, we can then plant peas and beans at the base, so they use the structure to climb over them. Culture we use in nature as a teacher, and we also get inspired from nature designs, that it might be a snail house, or it might be the shape of a mountain, or it might be the shape of a seed or a spiral or whatever. We can use it because that's been thousands of years of evolution, so that meaning that they are well adapted and they're thought through, and that's what we're trying to use here in this garden. We have a design, we were thinking through the whole thing, and the design is not 100% ready yet, but we're gonna go on a review during the coming weeks when the workload in the garden outside decreases, so we can go inside and check the design. And we're having a PDC course in a couple of months in November, and we will have feedback from the teacher, and that's fantastic. So here in this corner we have a great plant. It's called Symphytum in Latin name, or comfrey. This is an accumulator plant. It has a really long, really deep root, meaning that it can take the nutrients from deep into the soil and bring them up into the surface. It's a plant that is attracting bees and bumblebees. The leaves can be used to prepare compost tea by basically cutting the leaves, chopping them, and then putting them in a water tank or a barrel, add the water, and then you can leave it there for a couple of weeks, but remember to agitate the water every day a little bit. It will smell, it will be a stink, but that can be used as a liquid fertilizer for the garden. But making sure that it's diluted, because it's too high in nitrogen and minerals that could kill some of the plants. So it have to be diluted in 120, meaning that we need to have 19 or 20 parts of water and 1 of fertilizer. And I heard this is also a medicinal plant. I don't know yet what it can be used for, but we're gonna investigate. I know some people use it for cosmetics, and this is our next step with this plant. We have 3 of them in the garden. We can simply chop some of the branches and then leave them on the soil. So the microorganisms and the insects are decomposing the leaves, bringing the nutrients into the surface, into the higher layers of the soil, and that's fantastic. One reminder for you for next year. This year we have a lot of slugs, and those slugs are feeding on the plants that we're growing, especially from the beginning. So we spend a couple of months growing seedlings inside the house, and when they we come into the garden and put them. So the slugs are just having a fest every day. So what I recommend is to have you have enough resources, have 1 or 2 volunteers with a shift every evening or morning to go slugs picking, and then put them in a bag or in a container, throw them in another place far away from the garden, or just kill them depending on you, whether you are vegan or not. But it's better to prevent and work in that way, because the bear trap not always work. So in this bed we have flowers. We still need some more flowers, but we have artemisia, for example. We have lavender, and then we have poppy plants, and then we also have some echinacea. And echinacea is one plant that is also very good for cosmetics, but also attracting bumblebees. So this is the echinacea. We welcome it. And then we have some amaranthus growing in the garden, and some edible flowers that are called lilac or viola in different colors. I think they are dying for this season, and next year we have to replant some more, to buy some more. So cool bed, but it contains mainly plants from the cross flower or crucifera. It contains cabbages, it has rucola, it has calendula, that is from the Asteraceae family. We have calendula all over because it attracts many insects, and it's a plant that is very resilient. It's a self-seeded, you will find in many beds, and we're also picking them for drying and producing cosmetics like creams and oils for massage, because they are really good on reducing inflammation on the skin. So we continue our walk to the design bee. It has a very beautiful shape inspired of nature. We were ready with this bed with the design implementation by late June. That means pretty late in the season, and because it wasn't really hot this year, and we had to water at the beginning by hand, and this is one of the challenges. The irrigation system that we had doesn't work for this kind of circular or non-linear beds, so we need to water by hand. And many plants are growing quite late, but still we're gonna be able to harvest a lot during August and September.
What might be the solution actually? Are you making? Okay. What might be the solution with the irrigation system?
So, yeah, we're working on harvesting water from the roof of the house, and the moment we have a few tanks. We have 4,000-5,000 liters. It's not that much. Sometimes we need to fill the tanks from water from the municipality. Now, what we're doing here, we will need, because we're using gravity as a pressure to pump the water from the house to the garden, we will need some kind of pump that also helps to pump the water with more pressure. So we have another kind of water system that is not dropping irrigation system for this design, but another one that is like doing this
Sprinkle.
It's this kind of a sprinkle system. That would be a good solution for this system. We just need to find out a bit more about it. So here we have a small pumpkin. It has to grow still, but I just wanted to mention that is a new pumpkin this season. It's a traditional pumpkin from Spain. It's called Cabello de Ángel, and it has this kind of spaghetti fibers inside, and this is used to make confiture, to make jam, and also some cakes. So It's more for dessert rather than lunch or dinner as a main dish. And so in this part of the garden, we see that we have kale. That is a biennial plant from last year. Um, we just cut the seeds. We've been collecting seeds from green kale and red Russian kale. We have more than 3 kilos of seeds. I think we have too many of them to cultivate next year, but we can probably sprout them and eat them. And after cutting the seeds, the branches, so they starting to produce leaves. So we're gonna have food for the autumn and winter. And this part of the garden we will expand in the coming months. We're creating this kind of contour line beds parallel to each other, so we'll be able to grow a lot more food. Here in the middle we got a tiny tree that is a quince, so it will take a few years to grow, and that bed is still on process. We need to figure out what we're gonna plant there next year.
And the last bed in our garden, it's Hugo bed. Here we just plant some things like sage, kale, Savoy cabbage, strawberries, and etc. And just behind me we have a small orchard. We next year we are planning to have more beds in here, and this year we had 2 experimental beds, non-digging like beds, and we just planted potatoes there. We put cardboard and some seaweed or horseshit compost, and just put potatoes under the soil, and it's growing very well. We just harvested about, I don't remember, about 15 kilos of potatoes today. Yeah. We have a lot of berries and trees around the garden, but we would love to have more. But instead of buying new bushes and trees, we want to multiply. For example, strawberries, an example. After producing strawberries, it starting growing new, I don't know, kind of strawberries. So actually we can cut and plant new strawberries around. And the same with all kind of trees. There are many ways, like to plant seeds. Like we have a peach tree that we are planning to do, crafting and etc. So it's one of our plans is to multiply what we have, different bushes and trees. Last autumn we had a big project in the garden. We had many trees, and they used to be in a chaotic way and very close to each other. It's about 2 meters, like apple trees, 2 meters between, and it wasn't enough. So we transplanted those trees into a new orchard in here, and also over there the whole line. And now we have how to say, forest garden. It's a tree with bushes around. And for you to know, next year in spring very important, you need to prune the trees, and yeah, most of the trees. So if you don't know how to do it, learn how to do it and prune. Otherwise ask Dada Rudranath or Takeshi. And also while the tree producing apples, see small apples or also fruits and take them out, just because they take nutritions. So now I took 1 apple, all the nutrition that were going to go to this apple will go to big apples. So find small apples and put somewhere there. And this year we had a problem with wasps, a lot of wasps. Maybe because we have a big bee company, bee campaign. We have a lot of bees, around 7 or 8 beehives, and so you need to put around some wasp traps or find wasp nests and to take them out. And also this year we had a late frost. That's why probably uh, most of the bees they didn't come to pollinate, and this year we had not so many fruits actually, but hopefully next year we will have more. And just make sure that there are a lot of fruits on the branches. And this year we had a problem that we have a peach tree with a lot of peaches, and one of the branches it broke. So you need to support it somehow or to take fruits, otherwise it will break. Yeah. Thanks to one person, Takeshi from Japan, he built these two beautiful sheds that are amazing. And one of the ideas for next year, or I don't know, this year, it's we have a lot of tools actually, and I have an idea in my mind to have a list of tools that once a month maybe to check that nothing is missed. So maybe you can implement this. And also Ruben made this beautiful bed.
So the point here is because we have the roof here that is collecting the water, but then we have created a small swale here that we cannot see, but there is a bed. And the reason why is because we want to capture and store the energy, and in this case we store the energy in form of water and will be transformed into biomass. We have sweet potatoes here, but we also have planted some onions, and because this bed we have finished it with the help of a friend that was visiting for a couple of days not so long ago, so there is not much growing, but the plan is next year we can plant a few flowers and perhaps bushes, and it's a way to show one of the principles of permaculture. Then on the vertical structures, then we have a couple of plants growing. This is a perennial Caucasian spinach, and it grows in shadow areas. This is part of the garden that doesn't receive much sunlight or straight sunlight. We have one here and one Caucasian spinach in the other pole, and they're growing pretty slow, but like in 2 years we will be able to feed ourselves with spinach for the whole summer, and they're gonna grow up to the top, and it's just fantastic. I just love the climbing structures, the climbing plants. Yeah. So thanks again to Takesh and Arpita, because they come here once a year and they help with a lot of stuff. Producing miso that is great fermented beans that is fantastic to actually give more nutrition to our intestines, and then building structures, and they are a fantastic couple.
I think that's